and now I don't have a life jacket, and I know the ship is sinking, and I asked Lieutenant Stauffer permission to cut down the big new supply of K-Pop life jackets. He said, not until we get word to abandon ship. And you go and you hold on to that rail, and believe me, if you know the Lord, you're praying. I don't want to die. I don't know what all. I promised him.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be with you. This is my friend, Sgt Edgar Harrell, who I've known for quite a few years now. And he has an incredible story that I know you're all looking forward to hearing. And we're in Tennessee. He lives in the Clarksville area. So we're between Clarksville and Nashville right now. And he's going to tell you a little bit about his experience and his life lessons. So, Mr. Harrell, I'll turn it over to you.
You ready for me?
I'm ready for you. Yes,
well,
sir.
What an honor after these years knowing you. And okay, I see some that are listening to me, and you're going to have to put up with this old 96-year-old World War II Marine. But if I have the freedom, then I'll back up and say that as a 17-year-old boy, knowing what was happening in the Pacific, know that the Japs were at Midway, I go to the draft board in Murray, Kentucky, and I tell them, I don't want to wait and be drafted. I want the Marines, and I want you to call me up. And they obliged and called me up, and I go to Evansville, Indiana, and pass the physical, and I tell them that I thought I wanted the Marines, and I said, I want to get in the Marines. They said, you have to go to Indianapolis, Indiana to be sworn into the Marines. I go to Indianapolis, and they accepted me. They sent me home with orders then to report to Marine Corps Base in San Diego at a certain time, some 2 weeks later. But I go home, and you know what? Something happened. I look back at it and say, I think it was providentially, because I came down with the mumps, and I couldn't go then. And I had to wait for several weeks, and then I have orders in to go to Marine Corps Base, and I go as just a straggler, one man, and I go through boot camp, and after boot camp, they said, Private Harrell, you've been selected to go to sea school, which meant that I would be seagoing. And from there, then I go through sea school. They send me up to San Francisco, not knowing what to expect when I get there, but they put me on guard duty there and had some of our own men, the boys that I got acquainted with them, but stood guard over them there now for several weeks. And then one morning, then they said, Prophet Harrell, you're to go down to a certain place, and there is the big USS Indianapolis, and that's going to be your home. Okay, I'll go down there, and you can't imagine what I thought when I saw that big ship, twice the length of a football field, USS Indianapolis, and I go aboard, and there were some 38 other Marines in that detachment, and I go aboard, and we are to head into the forward area, and I then go, my first battle star, so to speak, was Kwajalein and Eniwetok. Then I was at Saipan, Tinian, Guam, Sea Battle of the Philippine Seas, where our task force shot down 403 Japanese aircraft that day. Then I was down at Peleliu. I was at Iwo Jima, 3 airstrikes on Tokyo, and lastly, I was at Okinawa. It was at Okinawa that we were preparing for the 27th Army and the 6th Marines to invade. But as we were preparing the beachheads for them to land, we were having problems, and we saw that there were many aircraft, Japanese, in the air, and they were coming in suicide anytime that they could make it into us. And I recall that I heard the boatswain blow the whistle, set emergency condition in the anti-aircraft battery. And that was something that we had to rush to do. I rushed to my 40 millimeter and picked up a clip of ammunition and put it in the breech. And then I said about 11 seconds later, this plane came in suicide, and he nearly missed the ship. He was aiming for the fantail where I was, really, but one bomb on one wing went in the water, one went all the way through the ship. It went through the mess hall, went through a sleeping compartment, went through the water distilling plant, went out the bottom of the ship, and it exploded on that big 16-inch shaft that turns the screws. And from there, then we knew that we were indeed in trouble. And now from there, then we're taking inventory, and we realize that we've got to do something, a big gaping hole in the ship. And we sat there for a day or two defending ourselves, and then we headed back unescorted and back to the States for repair. We get back to the States in for repair, and there was much to be done to that. And so after repair, then we got word, I think it was the 16th of July, and we saw all kinds of brass out on the dock, and we wondered, who is this? And we saw a lot of Marines and Navy, and they were coming aboard. And then we saw then our crane reaches over on the dock, and it picks up a big crate. Well, what's in that big crate? No one knows, no. But my Marine captain said, then Corporal Harrell, follow that into a certain place and station a guard. Captain Parks, what are we guarding? We don't know. And then there were a couple proposed to be Air Force officers coming aboard, and they had a little canister with something in it, with a padlock on it. And I'm told then to take it up to a certain quarters, which was Admiral Spruance's ship, but he's not aboard. None of the crew is aboard. And so I take them up to a certain place, and we take that little container in, and a couple of sailors came, and they had a long strap of metal, and one had a blowtorch, and he kind of spot welded that metal to the deck over that container, and it was not going to get away. Now, who were those Air Force officers? They were not Air Force officers. They were scientists from Los Alamos, New Mexico. Now you kind of get the picture. And what did they have there in that little container? It was half of all the uranium that America owned at that time. The other half was in San Francisco, waiting for them to get to their destination. And then it was loaded aboard a B-29 and had its own parachute. They were not going to lose that. And they made it then to the forward area. Okay, we get underway. we get underway with our cargo, and we're going to Tinian Island. Okay, on the 16th, I believe it was, of July, we start. Now at some 5,300 mile. Would you believe that we made that in 10 days? Yes, in a heavy cruiser. I can remember I was a captain's orderly. I was out in the main deck, and the officer of the deck says, Corporal Harrell, I need to talk to the captain. And so I notify Captain McVeigh that he's wanted on the bridge, and he goes out, and the officer of the deck says, Cap, we've got to slow this thing down. We're going to burn up the motors. Well, he didn't know what Captain McVeigh knew, but he knew that we were going some 32 knots, rough weather and so on. But Captain Park, I could, he said, keep the same speed. We kept the same speed. And then on the 26th of July, 16th to 26th, 10 days, we'd gone 5,300 miles. We unloaded our cargo, had the least idea what we were transporting. Okay, from there, then we get word then that we already knew the scuttlebutt and that we were to go to the Philippines to prepare for the main invasion of Japan. Our ship was the flagship of, I said, of Admiral Spruance, and we knew the scuttlebutt was that our good president was going to invade. We would be landing maybe 2 million troops on Japan, and either that or we would try to negotiate something with them, or we didn't know what we had, but President Truman at that time, he knew exactly what we had just transported, the atomic bomb. And he knew that we had it because on the 16th of July, the morning we were leaving for that long trip, we didn't know, but they made a picture of our ship as we were going under the Golden Gate Bridge there in San Francisco. And that was at the time that they first knew that in Los Alamos, New Mexico, we would detonate the first successful atomic bomb. Okay, now then we've delivered that, and Captain McVeigh then asked for his sailing orders, and they tell him, you're to go to the Philippines to prepare for the main invasion of Japan. You are to meet the USS Idaho at a certain distance out there along the way, and we would go with him. Okay, that was July the 26th now, and about July the 29th, we have orders on the night of July the 29th, about 14 minutes past midnight. I had gotten off a watch at 12 o'clock. Now, we had been traveling that earlier in rough weather and delivering our cargo, but now we'd slowed down to about 18 knots, but it's 110 degrees outside. And the good captain then says, we thought we were in safe waters, that we can slow up and 110 degrees and so on. And I recall that when I got off a watch then that night at midnight, I go to my quarters and I get my blanket because I know where I'm going to sleep. I'm going to go all the way forward. The night before, I'd slept on top of #1 turret, but Supposedly that day, 3 of we corporals were promoted to sergeant, but it hadn't gotten off the ship. And I thought, you know, maybe I shouldn't sleep in that K-pot life jacket. I think I'm going to tell my buddy Munson, I'm going to sleep right down here on the deck, right under the barrels of that big 8-inch gun, 3 big barrels. And so I go forward and I make me a kind of a pallet with my blanket. I take off my shoes and I use the shoe kind of as a pillow with a blanket on it. And I'm stretching out, and about 14 minutes past midnight, we didn't know anyone was out there, but Commander Hoshimoto in that big submarine, he had picked us up. He knew that sooner or later someone would come along that route, Petty, and he was just waiting. His little periscope was up, but he was not out to where he could be seen. And he picks us up and he announced to his crew, stand by. He loaded 6 torpedoes and he's waiting. We have the least idea that he's out there. No one is with us, but about 14 minutes and past midnight, he fired 6 torpedoes. I recall I'm sleeping right down on the deck here, and all of a sudden I heard that explosion, and it was troublesome. It was big. It was shaky. And then the second one, that first one, I could believe even at the time that it cut the bow of the ship off. No way to see and know what's happening. And then the second torpedo then was back under number 2 turret, the big 8-inch gun. And later we found out it hit the magazine down there, and that explodes. We don't know what's happening, but all kinds of other explosions aboard the ship. And if you could imagine that long sleek bow, some 35, 40 feet of that bow is cut off. And I could see enough to know that there were some little 20 millimeter ammunition guns up there, and that was cut off. And I tried to tell people that first torpedo cut the bow of the ship off, and they think that I'm just dreaming, but it cut it off. I can prove it later. And then that second torpedo. Now then I'm listening, feeling, if you can imagine, torpedoes cut that bow of the ship off, and all of that water is coming in, and all the hatches are sealed topside. All of that water is coming in. Those 4 big screws are pushing. We don't know what's happening. It's bedlam. And I know I've got to make it back midship, which is my emergency station. And as I start aft to my emergency station, there were officers coming out, and you could see that they were just maybe in their night skivvies, and they were flash burned, or they would put a hand on a bulkhead and leave the skin of the hand on the bulkhead. Now that's what I'm seeing and experiencing. I'm making my way then back to midship, back to the quarterdeck, and my Marine lieutenant was back there. And now I don't have a life jacket, and I know the ship is sinking. And I asked Lieutenant Staff for permission to cut down the big new supply of K-pot life jackets. He said, not until we get word to abandon ship. Now the ship is sinking. Even by now, normally on the quarterdeck, you would be 8 feet above the water line, but the ship is listing. There's water on the quarterdeck now, and we're waiting for word to tell us to abandon ship. And there was a Navy commander that came from below deck, and someone said, get the commander a life jacket, and they began to cut those down and put one on him. And I could tell that he was wounded. I got a Kapok life jacket, knowing now that water is on the quarterdeck, knowing, believing that at least the first 100 yards of the ship was underwater. And so I'm waiting patiently. No, I'm waiting to get word to abandon ship. Well, the good captain, McVeigh, all PA is knocked out. All electricity is out. It's just the fires aboard ship that we could see where we are and see who's around us and so on. And we're waiting for McVeigh then to give word to abandon ship. And of course, he can't, no speaker. And finally, he does give word, but it's an oral word, and you could nearly hear the echo from one to another coming down from up there, sky forward, coming down to abandon ship. So I'm making my way then over to that rail then on the high side, and knowing that water is on the starboard side, knowing that I'm going to have to get off. And you go and you hold on to that rail, and believe me, if you know the Lord, you're praying. I don't want to die. I don't know what all I promised him, but I can hear myself tell him, Mom and Dad back home, 6 younger brothers, a younger and an older sister, and may I say, and there was a certain brunette that said that she would wait for me, and getting ahead of the story and say, and she waited. Okay, now then I leave the ship. I'm praying. I knew to whom I was praying, and believe me, I can hear basically him saying to me, peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your hearts be troubled. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I leave the ship knowing that somehow, some way, I'm going to make it. Now, I did not know that I'm going to be out there some 4.5 days. I leave the ship and I look back and see that bow is under. I see that fantail high in the air, and those screws are still turning. I see it as it goes under. I made my way out, I don't know, 100 yards or so, and there were a group out there. We began to group together, and we could see that some didn't have Kapok life jackets, and they're hanging on to someone, and then some were injured. And so we were doing our best to take care of whomever. And I'm looking for any Marines. Well, I found 2 Marines. One was a new man that had come aboard, and I found him, and I saw that he was badly wounded and desperate. And I tried to find out, and maybe he told me who he was, but I knew he was one of the new Marines. And may I say, and believe me, he passed away in my arms in the next few minutes. And I'm looking for that other Marine that spoke up and hollered out. And I finally find Spooner. He's going to be in my squad. And I find him, and he'd gone into the water head first, dove into that black oil. That's all in his eyes. And how do you get it out? You don't. He's going to wear that. I'll get back to him later. But I left the ship, and then later to see it go under. And here I'm out with that group, and we're losing boys just every little bit. And then daylight comes, and we're taking inventory, and may I say, it's 110 degrees, and you would love to have some water, but you dare not to drink that salt water. I saw boys that think that they could take some of their clothing and put some water up in that, put their head under there and drink some of that water, seawater, but it is full of salt, and it isn't long till it's gone to the brain, and they don't know straight up. They don't know that their buddy is their buddy. He might be a Jap, and if he's a Jap, you know, there maybe would take out their sheath knife and stab their buddy. And so we're going to lose boys just right and left. And it's bedlam out there, and we're desperate. Well, we're losing boys just every little bit. And hot weather, hot. You would pray for rain. You'd see a little cloud maybe coming over, and you'd open your mouth heavenward, and maybe you'd get just a few drops of water. But what is on your face, you've got all that oil, and that water then maybe is kind of draining down over that black oil, and you drink that, and then you're up chucking, and you're getting rid of the little water that you got. Okay, now then we're desperate. We're desperate. And may I say, there best that we could count, there was about 80 of us. Okay, now then the third day at noon, there's only 17 of us. Now you can only guess what's happening. Mass committing suicide, merely attacking one another, drinking that salt water and going crazy. Maybe you don't have a K-pop jacket, and you can imagine that there's an oasis out there, and you see a buddy that he's swimming away from the group. How do you keep him in the group? You don't. And then all of a sudden, you look and you hear a blood-curdling scream, and you see that K-pop is under, but sharks. Later, you go and check to see who he might have been, and you can take his dog tags off if you want to, but you should leave them on. But you check him and you find out that the bottom torso is gone. He's disemboweled. Now that's happening just every little bit. So as I say, third day at noon, 17. And I can recall that day when there's only 17 of us. Now, all we've got on is an old K-pop life jacket. How long will a K-pop life jacket keep you afloat? Not indefinitely. So what do you do after it won't? You're having to swim all the time, but you can't keep that head above water. And so what do? I can hear this big old Texan say, he had tried it. He took off his K-pop jacket. He brought it down under him, and he's sitting in it basically, and he's still having to keep his head up, but it's a little lower in the water on his body, and he's keeping his head out. So here we all 17 of us are doing that. Well, that was like the third day at noon. And then from there, then I recall that we heard, now we were nearly hearing voices, but we were hearing voices. And as we responded, it isn't long till we saw what looked like a little life raft, and we could see motions out there. It isn't long until the little raft came, we're waving, we're hollering, we know it's our buddies, but as they got closer and closer, they came into our group. We could see that it's a little makeshift of a raft. Now, when they came, we saw that no one was on the raft, no, but 5 sailors around it. And when they got closer and closer, what do they have on that raft? Okay, what did they have on that raft? They had K-Pop life jackets that they had taken off of boys that had already expired. They had squeezed them out and they put them up on that little raft in the sun. And as they came into our group, they were around that little raft. It consisted of maybe 3 or 4 40 millimeter ammunition cans, which are flotation devices. And then they had something like old potato crates or orange crates. And then they had these jackets on top of that, and they're drying out. And so here they came in. Anyone want to join us? And I say to my buddy Spooner, Spooner, I'm going to go with them. And he said, Harold, if you go, I'm going with you. Now, where are we going? We don't know how far it is to the Philippines. We didn't know it was another 500 miles, but at least it's in that direction west. And I said to Spooner, I'm going to join them. And so 2 Marines joined those 5 sailors, and we think we're going to go to the Philippines. Now, those other of those 17, they thought we were crazy, but may I say this, they would not join us, but not a one of them survived. Now, here I am with these 5 sailors with old water-soaked K-Buck jackets, but at least it has more buoyancy than what I have. It had been squeezed out some. So I have that on, and we think that we're going west, and we were, and it isn't long until we came upon a swell. I said, look, there's something out there. It looks like a box or something. And I said, I'm going to swim out and get it. And they say, you're crazy. You might, sharks might get you. I said, they're not around us right now. And may I say honestly that sharks aren't looking for boys to do damage to, but if you're in their road as they go, they're gonna hit you and there's nothing left of you. So anyway, I saw something out there. I'm gonna go and see what that is. And they thought I was crazy. I do a dog paddle and I get out there and I got within about 5 or 6 feet of that old potato crate, and I saw those potatoes in there. I reached in and got me an old Irish potato, and as I squeezed it, oh, it was rotten, and that rot squeezed through my fingers, and I thought, rotten potatoes, but it was solid on the inside. So to take that rotten potato and you peel it with your teeth and peel off all that rot. Now, that's the first food and the first water, basically. And so we've got some food and we've got a little bit of water. And now then, we're gonna continue on west, and it isn't long, it's dark. And we hear voices. Now, may I say there's times you can hear things possibly that do not exist, but we heard voices there that night, and it was dark. It was probably midnight or so, and we heard voices. We responded, they back to us, and it isn't long until a Navy lieutenant that I knew aboard ship, McKissick, came in, and we want to know who, and he tells us, I knew him because many times I'm standing watch as the captain's orderly. He's the officer of the deck, and he gives me a message, and maybe to and from the good captain. So I knew McKissick. He was a peach of a guy down in Texas. And anyway, he and one sailor, so we visited with them, and then I'm desperate. I tie somehow or another, I had tied Spooner onto that little makeshift of a raft so that he couldn't get away. But then here is McKissick, and somehow or another, knowing him, he and I together with one sailor, and we're scattered. And I looked at that sailor, and different times I thought, "You're going to drown." And I'd shake him, and he'd respond, and he would raise up, and a few minutes later, the same thing. And the third time I checked him, he's gone. So it's just McKissick and myself. And okay, now then, we're out there now, the fourth day, swimming with a shark. And all of a sudden, then I hear a plane. Look, I hear a plane. Hey, I see a plane. And Lieutenant Gwynn, I didn't know who or what then, but Lieutenant Gwynn flying that Ventura, a twin-engine plane with wheels, he was out and he's having trouble with his speaker in that trailer of that antenna. Something on that had come off, and it was just whipping back and forth. And he says to the co-pilot, "Take over, I'm going to go aft. I'm going to pull in that antenna. We can't reach base, and I'm going to put a sock or something on it." And as he goes aft to do what he was going to do, he looks through the bomb bay door, and providentially, he saw down there a few miles, he saw maybe oil off of our clothing, and the sun hit that. Now, may I say that we're scattered over 12 miles. And anyway, he sees that, and here he wants to check it. So here he's coming down to check, and he sees boys scattered everywhere. And may I say that, believe me, I can see him even today as he circled McKissick and myself 3 or 4 times, and he's saying, "I see you down there, don't know who you are." And he has to go up much higher to report ducks on the pond. And he gets in touch with Adrian Marks then in a PBY, and he tells them what he sees. And he says, "That's an hour and a half for me." But he says, "I'm on my way." He said, "We're loaded, ready to come." And so he gets into the group, and what does he see? He sees maybe floater nets with the hundreds of boys on it. He dares not stop close to them. They would drown sink his plane. So he was determined he's going to pick up stragglers. He asked permission to land. They tell him, "No way do you set that big goose down in the open sea." But he and his crew could see sharks attacking boys, and they were determined that they were going to go against orders. They were going to land that plane. And may I say, I can see him as he's coming down today, just McKissick and myself, as he's coming down. Now and then there's swells, I don't know, 6, 7 feet. Now he dares not put those 2 props against a swell of water, but he's trying to run a trough. And he did, he set it down. I can see him. But that one right prop would never turn again. Just one motor would still run. But he would run the trough back and forth, and he's picking up. Now, he picked up 56. If you know anything about the fuselage of PBY, you say it won't hold 56 men. And my response would be, "It will if you tie 7 out on the wings." And I had 7 buddies that were tied out on the wings. But I get aboard now, and I'm desperate for water. He'd already picked up some. They didn't have water for, a crew of unknowns out there, but it isn't long until we drank all of their water. And from now then, they're going to take us someplace. As the barge was coming in, he passed over, I think it's the Underhill, anyway, the destroyer. And he said, it'll be an hour before I can get there. And so an hour or so from there, here he comes on the scene. And now we are being taken off of the PBY. They put me in a stretcher, bring me over, and they pulled me up vertically. And that's to be my quarters there for a period of time. Okay, now then from there, now we're going to be taken down to, I forget the, anyway, to a base there, and we catch a aircraft carrier, and they bring us then back to Guam. I'm going to be in Guam then, and well, in the hospital, yes. I finally got back to the States on October the 2nd, thinking I'm going home on October the 4th, but on the night of October the 2nd, I have a hurting in my side, and I couldn't wait till morning to go to sick bay, and I go to sick bay, and of course now then I have a new Marine Corps uniform on, that dark green, and I go into sick bay and I want to see a doctor. I'm in misery, I'm hurting, and I'm hurting so bad that I'm on a kind of a longer bench, and I kind of stretched out, lay on that, and that sailor then in his white uniform, he came to say, Marine, get up, you can't lie down in here. And I don't know what I said to him, but I was kind to him the first time or so. The second or third time, I'm in misery, and I'm desperate, and I'm there, and he comes again, and I get up, and I kind of said my piece, and I said it loud enough that doors begin to open, and others begin to come in. Who is it? What is it? USS Indianapolis survivor. Okay, now then they check me, and they find that my blood count is of such that they say, we got to send you to Balboa Hospital. So the next thing I know, I'm in Balboa Hospital, and they checked me and said, we can't operate. And I had a perforated appendix, and so they're keeping me there now for a period of time. And I'm desperate, and now they're operating, and that nice little nurse that is handling the vital sign, trying to be kind to me and all. And I tell her, my nose, I'm watching them operate, but my arms are tied down, and my nose is itching, and I tell her, get up and rub my nose is itching. And so she gets a little cough, rub my nose good, and then that was fine. I thanked her, and then she had to leave or something, and then all of a sudden, my nose is itching, and I was a tall gentleman in a white uniform and something on his head, and I said, sir, I got some robe my nose, and he gets a towel and he rubs my nose real good. Now the nurse came back and she said, hey, Marine, how's it feel to have an admiral to rub your nose? And I thought that was funny, but anyway, here I am. Now then, They operate. I'm in the hospital now, October the 2nd. I stay in the hospital through Thanksgiving, through Christmas. I think maybe it was the 6th of January or something like that. I finally get out and I make it home. Now it's a long story from there that would take another hour to tell you, but nevertheless, I survived that, and I've written 2 books. I've been in, I think, 43 states and Canada. This year, I was in Utah, Salt Lake City. I spoke a couple of times there, and then this pandemic hit, and I've been locked in all of this year. And I've got a ton of books, but can't get out to tell the story. But hopefully now, with this vaccine, that I'll be able to get back on the road and to tell of the greatest tragedy at sea in the history of the U.S. Navy was the sinking of the USS Indianapolis. I'm the last Marine living, the only survivor that's written a book. And I think today maybe there are 5 sailors of the 317 that survived. 880 did not make it. The 317, though, after spending some 5 days there swimming with just an old kapok jacket. So I have so much to be thankful for, and I express my Thanksgiving not just every few days. No, there's not a day in a few hours that does not pass that I don't look up and thank the Lord. I can remember what he said to me as I was leaving the ship: "Peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled. Don't be afraid." I can't say that I've never been afraid, but I've never forgotten what I experienced those 4.5 days. And I thank you for just the opportunity to tell. Oh, I might just say this past July the 24th, our good president had given the gold medal to the survivors of the USS Indianapolis. So today, I don't have that, but I have 10 battle stars that I won during that period of time. So I think I'm going to call it quits here. Thank you so kindly. Thank you so kindly. From Edgar Harrell, Sgt Edgar Harrell. Yes, I'm a sergeant, and it took all of these years before I got my promotion. They promoted me, but no back pay. But I have the honors of being a sergeant, USS Marine Corps. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so kindly. Bye-bye. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
This was awesome. Do you want to sit there just a second, Mr. Harrell?
Okay.
If you want to sit there, take a seat. Don't move that.
Sit down.
Yeah, you can have a seat there.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
If y'all have anything you want to say or ask, you type in chat and then unmute. Okay, Mr. Harrell Ripley, so I'm going to pull this down. Mike Kinney wants to know what kept you motivated for 5 days.
The question is what?
What kept you motivated for those 5 days?
Well, okay, I believe when I was praying, I believed with all my heart that somehow, some way that I'm going to make it. And I just keep looking up and praying every day, not just every day, but just nearly every moment, that thanking the Lord and asking for His presence, His forgiveness, and something, anything and everything, thinking that I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. I never gave up. And well, I survived. I survived. Uh, of the 317 out of the 1197, 880 did not survive. But I look back at what I experienced those days and believing somehow, some way that I'm going to make it. And I was determined to do everything that I knew to survive. And I look back today and just say, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. I'll never forget. I'll never forget those experiences. Thank you.
Chris has a question about how did people step up and lead while you're out there? You stepped up at times and was leader. How did you decide who was leading in those groups?
Oh, well, we did not have officers in our group, but it would be someone that would kind of take over. Anyone in his right mind out there, and some weren't in their right mind. They were injured, they were suffering, and so. But there were those that would look at a buddy and think that he's a jab, and I saw many that were maybe stabbed with a side arm knife, and so many were crazy, but many were still in their right mind. And so you do what you have to do, and then you just look up and you just thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. And even today, I just look up, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, because there's no way that I could have made it without providential help.
Another story you told me before was you actually saved Spooner. He was going to give up, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, Spooner, when he came into my squad, my Marine captain came to me, and he said, then I was a corporal. He said, Corporal Harrell, you just inherited Spooner. And he says, now he has been shanghaied out of 3 different groups, but here he is aboard our ship. And he says, if you can't handle him, we'll get someone that can. And I go to Spooner when he comes aboard, and I tell him, I said, Spooner, I don't know too much about you. I just know what my good captain has told me. And I said, I'll treat you with the greatest respect, but you know what I've been told, and so you're going to have to toe the mark. And so now, when we're out there and just he and I together, you know, he tells me that, Harold, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And so he's a different man. And, you know, I just, yeah, he was my buddy through the years, but he had mental problems and he died an alcoholic.
Another part of the story is that they actually court-martialed the captain, and you all supported him.
Yes, I had two of my Marine buddies that survived, um, they went to Washington, and I'm in the hospital here at the end of the war, and but two of my buddies, they go to Washington, and one is an orderly for the good captain, and they were watching over the good captain, and were there to testify on his behalf. But I think Admiral King at the time, he's determined that someone has to take the blame, because if you look at facts, you'll see that the King himself was wrong in ignoring. He's wrong in sending us out unescorted. And so our good captain was wrongfully treated. And I, at our first reunion, I wrote a letter. I have my letter inviting him to come to our first reunion, and a copy of his letter accepting our invitation. And he's going to come, but he just wants a 15-minute talk or something. But he came, and we met him at the airport. We had some 450 of the families of the 317 that survived at Indianapolis, and we actually go out on the field, so to speak. We didn't wait for him to come in, but as he came in, everyone wants in the front of the line, and I can recall that brunette that was waiting for me. Now she says everybody's breaking their neck to get in the front of the line, but he's got to come through here. And so he comes through. Okay, as he came through, he got to this Marine. Here he reaches out and he shakes my hand, because he recognizes who I am, and he knew that I had written him the letter to invite him to come, but he knew who this Marine was, because I was his orderly and I was aboard ship and heard him, and he talked to me privately many times, and he was a fine gentleman, and he recognized me, and I thought the world and all of Captain McVeigh.
In an amazing story of forgiveness, you actually became friends with the Japanese commander and his family.
Yes. Well, Commander Hojimoto, yes. He goes home, but he lost all of his family at Hiroshima. And then he remarries, and then some of his family came to the reunion. And later, one of the younger ones came, and as they come, the one married, and they moved to the States, and they came to our reunions. In fact, we see to it that they can afford to come. They have been at our reunions through the years, and we become well acquainted, and we welcome them. They likewise, I recall one day that they were coming through, going down to New Orleans for a christening or something of a special ship down there. I found that they were coming through, and I tell them, you've got to stop and visit as you come through. Well, they did, and here they have an invalid son, a son that was a ball player, and a little girl, and they came though, and it was kind of evening time, and I asked if they had supper, and no, they hadn't. And I said, I'm going to take you then to get a bite to eat. Where would you like to go to eat? And you know what they said? Cracker Barrel. So I take them to Cracker Barrel, and then later they move on their trip. But we correspond with them, and we love them, and we see them every chance that we can. But we're getting older, and they are busy with their lives. But they live in central Illinois. Okay.
Last question. Steve and Angie want to know about that brunette.
Come again?
Steve and Angie want to know about that brunette that you talked about.
Okay. I got back home. That brunette heard that the ship had been sunk, and she goes to her mom and she says, Mom, just got word that Ed's ship got sunk. And they were saying basically no survivors or 100% casualties or something. But she waited, and okay, we were married in 1947, and I would not agree to marriage until I had an opportunity to get over all that I was experiencing, because I couldn't tell it without reliving it. But later then in 47, we were married, and she was with me 71 years. She passed away last year in March. But yes, she was that brunette that waited. We had 2 children. We had a son and a daughter. Okay.
Well, this was awesome spending time with you. Thanks so much. And for all of you on here, I am bringing back copies of his book. So if you would email me your address, I will get them out in the mail to you this weekend. So we will all have a copy of his book. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for being here. It was awesome spending time with you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so kindly. And simplify to everyone. Okay, simplify.